All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, the September 1st deadline for a football agreement for the 2025 college football season between the Mountain West and the Pac 12 has come and gone without an agreement between these two conferences. But at the end of the day, should we really be surprised by this? I mean, you look at Washington State and Oregon State right now, and they're exploring as many long term possibilities for their league as possible. Financial and scheduling flexibility are high on the list right now for the Cougars and the Beavers. And, we've heard about this, and it's not just lip service. Washington State and Oregon State really want to try to go out there and rebuild the Pac-12. They've got all of the resources at their disposal right now. So that right there is a viable possibility for them. Of course, hearing this happen, I mean, you have to wonder if still working with the Mountain West will be an option for Oregon State and Washington State going forward. I'm, in this world, you never say never. It's one of those where, but things could change. Lauren, how are you doing? And good evening to you as well. I will say this, you can never say never in this world, but I mean, from what I've gathered and what other people have said, it's one of those where it doesn't seem like the Pac-12 or the Pac-2 as it is, and the Mountain West have the best working relationship right now for a variety of reasons. Okay, and I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. So you have to one. I really highly doubt that the Pac-2 and the Mountain West are going to work together going forward. Could the Big 12 or the ACC still possibly be an option for Oregon State and Washington State? Possibly, you never know. There was talks, probably, this time last year about a potential full merger or reverse merger or bringing, Oregon State and Washington State into the Mountain West, merging with the Pac-12. All of those things really don't seem viable right now. You're hearing rumors that, Oregon State and Washington State really, they don't want the full Mountain West and the Pac-12, possibly, just wanting some teams. And, it's kind of, some of those things are kind of maybe rubbed people in the Mountain West the wrong way. But nonetheless, it's one of those where I still believe, I mean, there has to be a sense of urgency for this if you're Oregon State and Washington State, but they still do have time. They can be patient on this thing. They still have to find themselves a working schedule football wise for next season. I do believe Oregon State has six games committed for next season, while Washington State has five. I could be wrong as far as flipping that number around, but I do know one school has six games for next season so far, while the other has five, and they still have to try to go out there and find those other games to put into their schedule for 2025. But nonetheless, we know that they have the agreement with the West Coast Conference for all of their other sports. They also have the television deal in place with the CW to televise their games. So one question is, will there be Pac-12 football in 2 years? Because you remember the NCAA waiver. So the Cougars and the Beavers do have 2 years to try to salvage their conference, get at least six more schools on board with them. We have to wait and see if that happens. But I will say this: in a very short period of time, Teresa Gold, who is running things for the Pac-12 right now, she has shown more leadership, in my opinion, than both Larry Scott and George Kliakoff did for their entire respective tenures in this league. She is working to do what she feels is in the best interest of Oregon State and Washington State and the Pac 12 going forward. So I look at this thing I think anything could happen at this point because you never, the way things are going with collegiate athletics, you really don't know what's going to come down the bend. I say this because 10 years ago, did any of us at this point really think that we'd be talking about USC and UCLA in the Big Ten? I didn't think so. It's one of those things. Did 10 years ago, do we think all of these schools would have left the Pac-12? I surely didn't think so. I mean, anything in this world is possible. You're talking about Stanford and Cal and the ACC, and I can go right down the list. I will say this: I do believe that Oregon State and Washington State are going to explore as many possible options, first and foremost, to try to save their conference. And on top of that, I think that they're going to try to explore as many possible options to get into one of the Power Four leagues. And at this point, if Oregon State and Washington State were to get into a Power Four league, it would clearly either be uh, via the Big 12 or the ACC. It's one of those where you just look back on history, about 30 years ago or so when the Southwest Conference folded. Okay. And it was all nice and dandy for Texas, Texas Tech, Baylor, and Texas A&M as they got into the new Big 12 conference at the time as they merged with the Big 8. But what about those other schools? You look at how long it took Houston to get back to a power conference. You look at how long it took TCU to get back to a power league. You look at how long it took SMU to get back to a power league. And you have Rice. Rice still has not gotten back to that. So, in my opinion, if you're Wazoo and Oregon State, you can sit back and say, well, you know what? Maybe we don't want to go that route. Okay. So I think that they're going to explore as many possible options to save their league and try to get into a Power Four. I'm not going to say that merging with the Mountain West isn't viable. I'm just not as high on it as far as it potentially happening right now as maybe I would have been 6 months or 9 months ago. Okay. But one of those things, if you're the Mountain West, you know, reading the tea leaves, you could see that, hey, they don't want to be a fallback option for Oregon State and Washington State either. So at the end of the day, I don't see both of those parties working together short term to try to sort this out. It's one of those. I think Oregon State and Washington State, they're probably going to sit back and see where the next domino falls in this college football realignment. Because, like I consistently say, this realignment is not stopping anytime soon. And I truly do believe that the next domino that is going to fall is all going to come down to what happens with Florida State and Clemson with their battle right now with the ACC, and I think that is going to change things for a lot of schools because every time that there's one or two schools that leave a conference to go to another conference, there's always about 20 to 30 schools that are affected by that. But nonetheless, the deadline has come and gone for Wazoo and Oregon State. At this point, we could just sit back and see where the next domino is going to fall from them. But I think, on the short term, if you're Washington State and Oregon State, they're going to ride this thing to the brakes fall off for 2024. They've got their TV deal in place. They got to try to go out there and win as many games as possible and show their viability. Okay. And if you're the Mountain West, now you're going to get an additional conference game back for next year because all of the schools were playing 7 conference games this year to bring Oregon State and Washington State into their fray, if you will. But nonetheless, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised that the Mountain West and the Pac-12 could not come to an agreement for 2025. Oregon State and Washington State, like I said, they still have time, but they don't have time, if you know what I mean, because a year or so can come and go before you blink. So let's see what the next step is going to be for Oregon State and Washington State. Let's see what the next step is going to be for the Mountain West as they look to hold their spot as contending as the top Group of Five league out there. But nonetheless, at college football, college athletics, it's a business just like anything else. Money talks, everything else walks. And like I said before, let's see what the next step is going to be for Wazoo and the Beavers. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.